Hi, happy Tuesday. There are a few announcements from Heartwood today. The Heartwood monastics will be going to California August 5th through September 5th to study imparting the absolute truth through the Heart Sutra. The local Sangha is invited to the Bodhi Hall for meditation on Saturday and Sunday mornings from 8 to 8:50 a.m. and pranayama breathwork with Erdogan from 9 to 10:30. As a reminder, Heartwood offers in-person or online Dharma talks at noon each Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, as well as a Learning from Buddha course each Sunday night at 5 p.m. Please also join us for the 5 mindfulness trainings during which lay practitioners are invited to affirm their commitment to the 5 precepts. This occurs on the first Sunday of each month at 10 a.m. Heartwood also continues to offer Novena prayers a minimum of once monthly. The Novena prayer and meditation is inspired by the Catholic Novena prayer tradition. During this ceremony, for all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space and time, establishing the mandala for blessings, complete the bodhicitta preparatory practices, and perform the dharmas of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of infinite compassion, for healing, peace, comfort, and good fortune. The Theravadan chants for making merit for the dead, and the great sweet nectar for liberation of hungry ghosts. At the conclusion, we will offer the merit from their practice to your loved ones. If you would like to send a prayer request to be included, please send that to prayer@heartwoodrefuge.org. The following are upcoming retreats at Heartwood. Taking Refuge with Abhya Darpana, which will be July 22nd through 24th. For more information and to register, please go to the Heartwood retreat page on Heartwood's website. Donations are needed and much appreciated. Please see the website for information. And thank you to all who have offered help and support for the last few months. For additional ways you can help, we have put together a list. There's a volunteer sign-up sheet at the front desk for local Sangha. Thank you.
He said not to use that one today. He's trying a new setup. Okay. So I guess we will just open with incense burning and opening the gathas. And if you could get me the Majjhima Nikaya from that shelf. Incense burning, all space is filled with the fragrance. All Buddhas smell it from afar. Auspicious clouds gather everywhere. With utmost sincerity, all Buddhas appear. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage, we offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage, we offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. An unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with even in 100,000 million kalpas, having it to see, to listen to remember and accept. I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. Okay, so that chapter that we were talking about the other day was effacement, the rubbing out of self. And that's one of my favorite suttas, because I have so many things to rub out. and I like it. I like when knowing when there's something, to uproot, when there's something to some, if you don't know it's there, you can't uproot it. And so the purpose of the teaching is to point out what you're overlooking or what you don't know that's there. That's what's so wonderful about it. And it gives me an opportunity then to self-correct. And there's something about self-correct. Like I don't want you to have to correct me, so I'm always looking to see where I scan and to see where I can self-correct. But of course, if I don't self-correct, it's okay. You can correct me. Yes, we should do it in a certain kind of way. In a respectful way. Sometimes I see some things even with my teacher, and I know she has a high level of attainment. At least she introduced me to Buddha Master, and she had a chance to experience many things with him that I did not experience. I'm like, for real? Like in the way she may handle something, But then I remember about the having respect for your teacher, and I just get my mind together about that. Forget about her mind. I just focus on my mind, and that's our practice, to focus on ourselves regardless of what's going on out there, even when we have to take care of something, even when we have to say, I disagree, even if somebody has to leave, you don't have to leave mad, you just gotta go, So we learn how to be able to handle life and you have a certain clarity. And so I wanna talk about that. Now we have finally gotten, what chapter? Oh man, dang. Okay. Well, I'm going to review a couple of things in chapter 1, and I promise you we will be on chapter 2. And the reason is because I wanted to give you a setup, and I want to ask you if you will start your journal for your life on how you got to where you are now and what you need to have to be able to see it all completely and clearly. And she gives us a wonderful roadmap. She starts within the beginning that it took a lot of searching, even as a young child. And some of us in here understand that experience, searching for something that the world didn't offer us, something that was decidedly spiritual. It scared my mother so bad. She refused to let me go out and go to church. I would have to sneak out the window. My brother would catch me, and we'd go to church and come back, and I'd have to sneak in the window because she'd lock the door to the bedroom, so I couldn't get out because she thought I was gonna, or maybe they just weren't living in a way that they didn't want to be outed. So my brother had already started going. He had gotten hit by, he was delivering newspapers, and they do the morning drops. And his driver fell asleep and hit a utility pole and he went through the windshield, and he had, a fractured skull. And he said this line drew up around him like a coffin and said, "Because of sin, you are dead." And he said, "No, no, please, God, if you give me my life back, I promise I will live to serve you." And then he saw those lines erased, and he kept that promise throughout his life. Right after that experience, he started going through the whole neighborhood, collecting a sock, a shoe, a T-shirt from everybody from miles around, because there was an evangelist in town, giving healing sessions. And he went, and he had had this foot disease, and he went one night to the tent revival, and he went up front for his healing. And by the time he got home, that foot rot was healed. And so the next day they said, if you want anybody healed, just bring a piece of their clothing. He went and got clothing from everybody, people he knew, people he didn't know. He just went and got everybody because he had had a direct experience, you see what I mean, that he couldn't deny. And so I don't know if everybody got their healing, and I was only about 6 then, and I don't know if I had, any kind of thought of needing healing, but that's when they started calling him Crazy Johnny, you know. And so her experience was something like that. She had a dissatisfaction when she was young. And it said that after 9/11, when Billy Graham addressed the nation, and they asked him why God allowed this to happen, he said, honestly, I have to confess, I really don't know. But even a person who just started in learning the Buddha Dhamma understands the answer to that question. I mean, you can't always be going somewhere else, bombing and destroying their countries, not expect that to come back at home. It comes back. There is cause and effect. And so, I mean, they called us, they call you unpatriotic if you even say it. But, I would have one to know the truth, even if they didn't understand me. So there are things that one has to reconcile within their life and how they handle their life and how they flow in life, rather than doing whatever you want or saying you are the greatest nation on earth. I mean, at times it's been China, at times I guess it's been Russia, at times it's been Egypt, at times, nobody stays on top forever. And so as I look at the shifting occurring in the United States, I'm pretty sure that, that we have peaked and we might be on the decline. So if we are, it's no point in me running around doing a lot of things, to try to keep us on top because our morality doesn't demand it. And so if we can't fix that, it's no way that we're going to stay on top. And for some of us, I don't think the United States has ever been on top, because some things just weren't right, But it takes time for something to come to the surface and to mature. But as many of us as can make a change, if we do make that change, we build that wall that I talk about, that allows us to have some peace and some harmony, and to maintain a hopeful and a positive attitude, and it allows us to serve beings with all our heart and all our might and all of our strength, regardless of what may be going on in the outside world. We learn how to protect our heart, how to protect ourselves. And so, so we would have been able to answer this, cause and effect, and we did at 9/11. So she goes on to say that in time they were taught about heaven. would say in the Christian diaspora, heaven, or the um, in the Judean tradition, we talk maybe about the heaven, or maybe in the Muslim in the world we talk about the heaven, but just talk about the heaven. In the Dharma, we talk about the heavens, simply because we recognize different realms and different classifications of beings based on different levels of attainment. So there's awakening, but different levels of awakening. And some can finish not from here, but they can reach a certain level here that upon the shedding or dropping off of the body, there can be the re-arising based on karma or conditionality or cause and condition. They can arise there can be an arising in another dimension, and they can finish their work there to enter into the absolute nibbana. So you could have maybe a once returner, you can have a non-returner, because they can finish their work, they can continue to learn and perfect themselves in heavenly realms. So these heavenly realms do exist, and they are a reward, you could say, for a good life on this earth. But they are still part of samsara, which means that you can get into those spaces because it's not the complete, it's not the ultimate, and you can fall back the same way I could have been really good yesterday, and then something threw me off today, and I fell back, you know. And so because they haven't reached the ultimate, there's also always the potential to fall back. I don't know. And then she talked about desiring to go and to become a minister in the 50s, and she was not allowed to at that time. I was, I had just been born, but in the 60s, when I wanted to go to college, well, first I tried, I wanted to be a mechanic for hot rod school, because that's how I paid my way through college. I was a drag racer, and but they didn't take women. The other thing was to be a preacher, and they didn't take women. And so I just took some course, I went into the music field instead. But then after I became a Buddhist, and Buddhists didn't sing, and they didn't make music, then I gave that up, and it was, 15 years of silence, just trying to resurrect a little bit of that. But she mentioned that she had her career in engineering and banking and government. So if you understand that, you understand kind of how she is because of what her background is: engineering, banking, and government. And then she went on and just jumped right into talking about being in contact with other dimensions. She was high up in Bank of America. And so she had to be a certain way. She had to carry herself a certain way. She had lots of money. She had, there's a way she had to live this life. And now suddenly she's having these kinds of spiritual experiences. And at first she was telling people about them, and then she stopped telling people about them because people started, either they didn't believe her, they thought she was nuts, and it would be difficult to hold the kind of job she was holding, talking about these kinds of things. But they're coming up for her more and more and more, and she hadn't found a community to be settled in. And so because she she didn't know what to do because she didn't have a community, but she later came to know that she was having spontaneous initiations. And she began to be visited by light beings. But here's the part that I want to get to, because all of that's great. And I just say it, I just throw it out there, because all of it is just part of the path, if you will. It's not extraordinary things as we think of extraordinary. It's just simply a part of the path, and or part of the path for some. And so we shouldn't make a big deal about it, or we'll vector off the path. But what comes with this is not all of the sparkling or all the spark, but what comes with these kinds of initiations is a certain kind of clarity, is what I want to say. A certain kind of clarity to be able to live this life, you know. And there is a certain kind of bliss or joy that comes with it, because it allows you to rise above the mundane vicissitudes of life, of the eight worldly winds of praise and blame and loss and gain, pleasure and pain, fame and shame. Those eight, we're tossed by those eight all the time. So the significance of initiations, whether they are done, or whether they're intertantric initiations done by holy beings that manifest and empower us, or like a yidam, whether they're done by a high-level master who has the capacity to do them, which I don't have any authorization to do them, or whether it's by whether it was a spontaneous initiations, whether and even whether one got an initiation through a direct reading of something, like just reading a book. For instance, if you read the Holy Monk book, in the back there's an Avalokiteshvara initiation given, and that's already been empowered. A person can read that, and they will receive that initiation, and that's fine. Receiving that initiation simply means that the offering has been empowered to such a degree that when you read it, something leaps inside of you, and there is an awakening there. So that's it. But beyond just the sense of bliss, or the sense of safety, or the sense of confidence that one gains when one reads something, like, there is also the clarity that one has that ripples throughout their life. So some of us are deep on some levels of clarity, but not necessarily the upper levels. Some have the upper levels of clarity and their life is a mess, and some have bliss, but it takes all of this folding and coming together. So what a teacher does is try to bring all of these aspects together so that one can live harmonious within oneself, so that one can understand the teachings, not just know them, not just read them, not just tell others about them, what they say, but that harmony can show up in their life and affect every aspect of their life. And so she would talk about how she'd have that spontaneous moment. There was something that happened when I got off the table the other day with Adragon. And by the time I set up to get off the table, it was gone. And it was a really, really big insight. I mean, it was a game changer, but it got buried in it's buried in my heart. Something else will have to happen. And maybe 2 things will have to happen. Maybe 10 things will have to happen for it to push its way out. But it's already there now. It's already seeded. It's already there. And I have to wait for the conditions to be right. Obviously the conditions for it to be present with me now are not right. Those conditions could be something as simple as my health. I haven't regained all of my strength, with my health. So if I try to force it, then I'm gonna just, keep having episodes. But if I take my time, even though I want to move faster to heal, then my mind will be in a place where it will just show up. It'll be right there. And so resting in these places and is part of the clarity that comes, that allows, and or the insight that comes, that allows the bliss that comes with it to be sustained, to be a non-eradicating bliss. And then your life begins to change. It doesn't come and go. When I say come and go, I hear you singing that song. It doesn't come and go, but you remain steady and you remain on course. That's the kind of happiness that we talk about in the Buddha Dharma, the kind of happiness that doesn't come and go, and that's based on a standard of stillness and of clarity. So so she began to talk about supernormal powers, and she gave a caveat first. She said, you don't talk about it. People will witness something, they witness something. If they don't, they don't. If nothing happens, nothing happens. So that's not really important, except you should know that if there is nothing happening, it's like I used to tell people, if you got the old time religion, you should show some sign. I mean, I go to church and everybody's like this, the mouth just turned downward and they all mean and grumpy. And I'm like, why are we doing this? And they would be talking about how good God was all the time and hallelujah, all that, but yet we were not getting. There was no sense of any kind of joy. And I said, you ought to show some sign. And that's what the Buddha said. So she pointed out that in the journey she took across the U.S. to share the book that had been compiled about His Holiness, that that people did not really understand or did not have true insight into the nature of reality. And by gaining this insight, and being for helping people be able to understand what is happening and abiding in such a state, that because if it wasn't possible for people who this is what they keep pondering and contemplating on, how would it be for people who were in other religions? It wouldn't be possible, who had taken up the concept of a God, of being created by a God, paying homage to that God, and worshiping that God in exchange for eternal life with that God. So she said, I could see how it would be difficult to experience, certain states because they had not been exposed to the teachings of the Dharma. And so she said, I realized then that while we had, like a Lutheran, there would be a reappearance in a Lutheran heaven, you know, in a Muslim heaven, um, because those were the perceptions of their mind. And depending on what level of consciousness, you know, uh, uh, the mind is going to see or perceive or understand things in a certain way. And it's not until you unlock the eighth consciousness that you're going to be able to understand anything about ultimate reality. So we don't have to try to jump to the eighth consciousness. You know, just be in the one you're in, know what that is, and be working towards an open, and when I say working on, I mean open and receptive to um, unpacking the next level of consciousness. And so she talked about all the things that she had, all the places she went trying to find truth. She converted to Judaism. Then she went to religious science. Then she went to UU. And then she went to Zen practice. And she found out in Zen practice that, as Buddha Master said, the Zen practitioners don't even have the ultimate Zen practice. They have a practice, but not the ultimate Zen practice because they don't have cultivation. So you can't reach those states without having a certain level of conduct. And so in the Zen Buddhism, she said it gave her a glimpse of the Dhammakaya, and the Dhammakaya is the truth body, right? The absolute without form, you know, which is really of no use to anybody because there is no communicating it to me, so I can't learn anything. So there has to be a manifestation, right? And so the manifestation um, would come through the Sambhoga Kaya, which would be the five wisdom bodies of the Buddha, and that would be uh, um, walked out through the Dhammakaya, and that's all the different Buddhas that appear in the world, you know, or in the worlds, I should say, not just here. We're not the only world where there are sentient beings living, but they're all over the place. We just haven't figured out with our science how to get to them. You know, maybe they checked us out and don't want to get to us. You know, um, and but you have to cultivate, and that's the first step. But once one has cultivated, then the insight starts to come so easily. One starts to be able to understand a simple concept that was so difficult to understand before. One is able to put into practice Chan or Zen or Dhyana is called, or Jhana in Theravada it's called. But you see all of these four, just one practice. They're just called by four different names, depending on which tradition you're in. And as you are able to lay this out, then what was confusion, like becomes something that is smooth and harmonious. Um, and it takes some effort to be able to do that. It also takes a desire to be able to do that. Most of our troubles stem from our unwillingness to do something, you know. And the question is, are we willing? So she went on to say that at the time that she met him, he had not been introduced as he is. He was a Dharma king at that time, and he had been recognized as a great Dharma king. He had a different name, and then some years later, he was recognized as His Holiness Dorje Chang Buddha the Third. Now, sometimes people like you in a certain way. They don't like you to be any other way than that way. The way that they've known you, the way that they feel comfortable with you, the way, and if you try to move, and be um, on your own escalator, they want to shut that escalator down because they want you to stay just the way they know you and what we're doing just the way that we're doing it. And in that way, we can't grow. At my church, we did fundraising for 20 years and was never able to buy a church. I don't understand it. It was a little storefront church, but nobody there really wanted to grow. If you came to visit, that was fine to come to visit, but you were going to be shunned because they didn't want any more than their few people. And they had their little family, and they did not want to open up to anybody else, no matter how much they said they did. When somebody showed up, they would show out, you know. Uh, and so we have to look um, at how we hold the Dharma. Now, in the Visuddhimagga, it gives us some ideas about these kinds of things, effacement, the rubbing out of self, right? And he says that when you sit down to meditate, he said, I don't call that practice. He said, I just simply call that a peaceful abiding, a pleasant abiding here and now. I call that a pleasant abiding here and now. He said, now, this is what I call effacement, and that should be practiced by you. And then he goes on and talks, others will be cruel, but we won't be cruel here. Others will gossip, we shall abstain from gossip here. Others will be covetous, we will not be. Others will be of wrong view, we will be of right view. Of wrong intention, will be of right intention. He said, but it's possible that quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, one enters and abides upon the first jhana, and he goes on to the second jhana, the third jhana, the fourth jhana. And he said, now all of these I am, he might think thus, I am abiding in effacement, but it is not these attainments that are called effacement in the noble one's discipline. They're simply called pleasant abidings here and now. And so in order for us to have a lasting kind of abiding in our meditative states, not just when we're practicing meditation, but abiding in a kind of state when you sleep, when you stand, when you walk, when you're walking, the kind of effacement that he called for has to be practiced. And so it gets a little bit iffy, dicey for us, difficult for us in how we will carry ourselves. And when we start finding joy, and I think he gave like 24 different examples. Others will have ill will and we will not. That means starting the next morning, just resetting every day, starting over every day. Others will be angry, will not be angry here until, and setting the example for perhaps, so others will be obstinate, others will be arrogant, others will be deceitful, others will have bad friends, others will be negligent, and then of course he was also saying we will not have that here. And then he talks about the inclination of the mind. And he says others will adhere to their own views. They will hold on to them tenaciously. They will relinquish them with difficulty. We shall not adhere to our own views or hold on to them tenaciously, but we shall relinquish them easily. So yesterday, I guess it was Sunday, I was talking and I was sharing about a sister, and we had a difference of view of how something needed to be handled within the monastic community. And she gave me her point of view, and I gave her my point of view. Then she gave me her point of view again, and I gave her my point of view again. Then she gave me her point of view again, and she used to be a lawyer, and but I can handle a lawyer. And but I thought about it. I thought that this is not going to go anywhere, you know. And so I just said, sister, I said, let's just do what you want to do. I'll make sure that that happens, because this is not going to take us um, where we want to go. And I think our friendship is worth more than this. And just let it go like that. I really didn't want to. And I didn't want to, not for myself, because it really concerned something that would be fruitful and beneficial for somebody else, you know. But we have to know what's happening in the moment. We have to see what's happening, and then we have to apply Dharma to it. Of course, for me in my state, it's better if somebody else applies the Dharma, that agrees with what I want to do. That's how we think. Let them see, like the error of their ways, or let them be the one that takes down. I mean, because we always think that way, But this practice is about us having the capacity to do that, and that's what leads to our realization, our growth, and our development. So when we, after a while, it becomes not reading so much, but putting into practice every moment of the day, the things that we say that we understand, the things that we say that we hold to be true. And our practice takes on, a different dimension. We can have a greed for knowledge as well, a greed for wanting to know things, you know. We have different kinds of appetites, different kinds of greediness. And one of them, the Buddha said, is greed for knowledge, to want to know, like, I'm, I'm glad we have these lights, but I don't really want to know how it all works. I know that if it's wired properly, I pay my light bill and I flip that switch, the light's going to come on. So I don't have to spend a lot of time with that, you know. If it's not working right, I can call somebody, and they can take care of that. And so some of that is the wisdom we acquire to not waste our time and things that are not that important, and we can devote more time to things that are important. And we can speak less, and we can hear more. And in speaking less and hearing more, we can learn how to communicate with others in a way that is harmonious and beneficial. Once life becomes smooth and easy, we slow down a little bit, and in that way we have a happy life. There's a song that we sing, the key to happiness. I know we don't have it. I'm not asking you to find it, but that's one way that we move. And then things shift in our lives. So we have to take responsibility for every single thing that's happening in our life. We can't put it on somebody else. Every single thing. Am I willing to take responsibility? If not, then I haven't caught up with the truth of causality yet. I might be working on it, but I haven't caught up to it. Or I don't embrace cause and condition. I think, I don't know, the tooth fairy left it for me or something, but not understanding the law of causality that governs this world. So I'd like to open the floor now if anybody wants to share anything or say anything. And I also want to say that we come from different spaces. So some of us may pass through the Dharma and go into some other practice after this. Some in other practices and come to the Dharma. so we appear and come together at this point in time from many different directions and having many different experiences within those different wisdom traditions that we have encountered in our life. So each one of us brings some unique perspective to what this present moment is and how we're holding this present moment. And if it is for uprooting suffering, we have to look at what is causing our suffering. And for one person, it may be a particular thing. For another person, it can be a different thing. But one should know what's causing their suffering. And if you don't know, then you should embark upon an inquiry around what's causing one's suffering and seek out the answers to that, just to that. And I don't mean the total package of the suffering of samsara. Just start small. The things that make life bothersome and that trouble you. Of course, nobody wants to die, but that which takes the joy of life, that puts you in Groundhog Day, Like I wake up every day, and I'm glad to wake up every day, So I don't have suffering in that sense, but it wasn't, maybe just 5 years ago I really did. I found some things. Well, I won't say 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I still found certain things in my life that were really unsatisfactory, even with all the roles I played in spiritual life in Buddhism, because I was dealing with a broad subject that wasn't specific to me. And then once I took it specific and I started pulling out these pins, these needles, these pricks, then everything shifted for me. And so now I'll open it up for real. And you find you have a lot less to talk about because your life just becomes contented.
I just loved how you were in this counterpoint with this lawyer. Are there more elements you can unpack where you mentioned there's a letting go, there's a holding, but there's some point where you're in touch with the intelligence where this is a really, really fruitful solution?
Well, first it was to try to use reason. It makes more sense. If you make a commitment a year ago and now that commitment doesn't make sense to hold to, then you should be able to intelligently and and rationally talk that out, especially if it's around the well-being and happiness of someone else. Forget reasoning, forget intelligence, the happiness and well-being of someone who now is walking this path and sees something has opened up for them. So let them explore. I was happy about it, and she was but it was around her saving face, and that's not a reason. And I'm like, come on, sister, and then I just tried to appeal to well, first it was the rationale. Then it was her conscience. I tried to appeal to the conscience. And then that sisters, monastic sisters, should not fight, when I say fight, but I mean and so then I just let it go. Okay, then we will do this. And I didn't do it in a grudging way. That's the important thing. It wasn't in a grudging way. It's like, this is the next step of this. Then yield and truly yield. Yeah. So now it's like not a thing from the moment I decided to truly yield. But if we yield, but inside we're not yielding, then that becomes an action. That's not going to have a good effect. It's only when we truly yield. Yeah. So that was it.
I really love that happy juncture you were able to be in, as well as then to yield and let go. But thank you.
Hi, Venerable. I've been reading Master Zizi's book and been trying to explore this notion of a guru-disciple relationship. Of course, there's always some resistance to having a guru. We hear there's a lot of charlatans and all of that stuff, but I wonder if you could share the value and the role of having a spiritual guru or a spiritual teacher to help direct us at this juncture in our growth, if it's appropriate.
So when we speak of a guru, over in the East, that's what they call a spiritual teacher. When it came to the West, they thought maybe that might not go over so well with us, so they just called it a teacher. I would say that there is a difference in the level of what I would call an ordinary teacher regarding their insight, their insight and their capacity, to hold those that they teach. But if you don't feel like a teacher is worth your respect, then you need to leave that one and find one that is. That's the other side of it. So these translations come from other languages, and the language, and it is a student-teacher relationship. So the guru is the teaching, and the student is the disciple, like the masters of the old days. So sometimes you hear the talk of the master here. Sometimes you hear someone, like, because I'm old school, I recognize, even though Zazi doesn't really teach me, because she was Buddha Master's direct disciple before I became his direct disciple, I honor her as a guru. So for me, it's a great honor to encounter one who has developed their own selves, to a certain capacity, and that I can recognize that. I can recognize it. But you have to know what the path is to be able to even recognize a great teacher. I mean, a lot, and so what I like is that Buddha Master gives some guidelines for how to recognize that they must possess the 5 vidyas, be well versed in the ancient texts. He talks about a lot of different things, and mostly needs to resonate with you, and if not, then find one, and good luck. They're not that many around. So for some, I'm an ordinary teacher. For some, I'm a master. For some, I'm like nothing, and we just be okay, because it's just whatever one's own mind says and one's perception says, But if I wanted to learn from somebody, if they had something that I wanted to learn from them, I would certainly incline my mind towards giving them the utmost respect, because a thing only has the value you give it for you. Yeah, does that help?
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Actually, you don't have to worry about that stuff too much, right? It's, because it's really not so much the person, it's the Dharma in them. And when that comes out, and you can recognize that. Yeah. And what's for one person would not be the teacher for another.
Could we call you our guru?
I think you shouldn't. I mean, no need.
I'm just curious.
Um,
So earlier in the reading, when Master Zazi was with the Zen teacher and they were together, at one point they became engaged in shamanic training. And so when they were engaged in the shamanic training, then the next thing that was said was someone sent them to Dorje Chung III because they were moving into a certain direction and that was recommended to them. Who sent them?
she didn't say.
Okay. I was really curious about who sent them.
She didn't say. You know, the thing is that he has disciples in, I mean, although he's Chinese, he had Chinese disciples and Tibetan disciples, and he has a huge following in Thailand. He's got a huge following in Korea, Hong Kong, Sri Lanka. You know, the smallest following is the United States, and it's just Zazi, you know, at her temple, and now we'll be opening an academy for the teachers, and that's it. So it's because they thought Westerners couldn't get it. They've not been under any urgency to translate the teachings. But now we have minus one book, which is why we're all going out to California for 30 days in August to read the one sutra that has not been translated, and that's the Heart Sutra, but his translation of it, because it's not translated in English. So we're going out, and I think it's 1,000 pages or something. So it's a long translation, and we're going out to get that. When we get that, then we have the whole, what's called like the quick path, which is when the master empowers you to be able to get it faster. You know, yeah. That's it.
I really appreciate what you said, Panawati, about a seed being planted. Well, you won't necessarily be able to think of it or understand it, but the seed is right there. And when the time comes, it'll blossom itself. And when I think about bodhisattvas, I think of my grandma. And I think about what she told me since the time I was a little girl. And I understood it. But now as I kind of have the opportunity to let that plant and truly become not just words, but action, she always would say, Dean, it's not what people say, it's what people do. And I think about that. And I think about the seed that you said was planted, because that seed was planted in me when you talk about our journeys 50 some odd years ago. And to be able to honor that journey in a different way and respect now is just a gratitude for Grams. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
What really spoke to me was when you were talking about the church, your little storefront church, and how people they wanted growth, or they said they wanted growth, and they put that out there, but they weren't really willing to step into that. And I've been really reflective of that, because there has to be a certain vibration of acceptance and non-judgment. And it speaks to me about the human condition. You know, there's many different circuits of spirituality, and I've really been meditating and reflecting on this one. And oftentimes when you said that you would notice people would be talking about God is good, but they would have a, downturned disposition. And it's the vibration that emanates the spiritual connection to the divine. And that ultimately, to me, is the enlightenment, is the connection to that expression of the divine. And you see it in people's embodiments, because I feel that people are open now in the heart more than ever for the spiritual teachings, because they have seen things in the good old time religion and the things that have not worked, and they're looking for the light. And so I really got a visual and understanding of that. And that ultimately, it speaks to the coherence, of acceptance, of love. And that, to me, leads to the path of enlightenment.
It's funny we talk about the path of enlightenment, but we're learning something through science. I just saw about this black hole that's close to Earth and how it's doubled in size, and it sucks in the light, so there's something beyond the light. That's all I'm saying. Okay. So when we talk about emptiness, no thingness, that is where there is no phenomena at all. And that's why it's very difficult to talk about becoming selfless. Like in the Theravada tradition, we talk about the, uprooting of self, and we talk about emptiness and so forth. You can't talk about emptiness if we think that or if we don't recognize emptiness as the ultimate, so that there is a self that is obliterated. We try to find a higher self is good, but then beyond higher self, there is no self, and it takes time to get to that place. Certainly higher self is better, and one that avails themselves to the light. We talk about the different worlds, and I mentioned on Sunday about the scientists just pointing out that there are 10 billion times 100 billion. Well, yeah, but they were using a modern word like galaxies or stars. I just read it in the Explorer the other day. And then I went in here to how they defined how long, Kalpa was. And it was like that kind of time frame, and I could see how from these ancient teachings and what scientists of today are discovering, there's really not much difference. So when we live our little 80 years and think we know something, it's really not that much. It's not that much. But if we just truly open up, one thing is everyone has to know themselves, because this is a journey of self-knowledge. You have to know yourself, and you have to really be looking at yourself, because only you can do you, as Dina says, you do you. And whenever we're looking out there at what we think someone is or is not doing or seeing or recognizing or aligning with, we're looking in the wrong direction. We have to look this way. Okay. All hearts and minds clear. 108, at least by mine. Clocks are like minds. Mine says 108. What does yours say, Joe? 106. See what I mean? May you be well and happy and peaceful. May no harm come to you, no danger. May you always be able to meet the inevitable difficulties of life.